Craving fresh, made-from-scratch Mexican food that actually tastes homemade? Cafe Rio's got you covered. Every tortilla is hand-rolled, every sauce is slow-simmered, and every bite is bursting with bold flavor. Hungry yet? Don't wait. Order now at CafeRio.com. Build your burrito, salad, or tacos exactly how you like them, and we'll have it ready hot, fresh, and fast. Whether it's lunch on the go, dinner with friends, or a full-on fiesta at home, Cafe Rio always brings the flavor and the fun. So what are you waiting for? We've got you covered. Savor the flavor and order now at CafeRio.com.
You're listening to the Utah Checkdown Podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown Podcast. I am Josh Furlong. I'm happy to be back with you. As always, that's what we say. We're ready. We're not we're like Utah. We're gonna move on, right? Yeah, we're gonna move on. That's all you can do, right? And so we're gonna get this thing started. We're gonna do a little preview of Utah's cross-country matchup with West Virginia. Should be a fun environment. It'll be raucous. Never been to West Virginia personally, so excited to get out there and kind of see it all unfold. It's going to be a raucous environment there, despite the Mountaineers just being 2-2. But I think it should be a pretty fun time. So we'll jump into that. But first, let me tell you about our partners, Cafe Rio. Craving fresh, made from scratch Mexican food that actually tastes homemade? Cafe Rio's got you covered. Every tortilla is hand rolled, every sauce is slow simmered, and every bite is bursting with bold flavor. Hungry yet? Don't wait. Order now at CafeRio.com. Build your burrito, salad, or tacos exactly how you like them, and we'll have them ready, hot, fresh, and fast. We've got you covered. Savor the flavor and order now at CafeRio.com. All right, so going into this week, obviously this is a big test for Utah, and you can look at the opponent and say, oh, this shouldn't be that hard for Utah, but you're traveling cross country. The numbers haven't been great for teams that do that, but at the same time, you're trying to shake off a loss that's really going to sting. Despite the score, 34-10, Utah still feels like there were chances, and they could have come away with a win against Texas Tech. They look to the close nature of the game outside of the last little bit of it, and it all matters, obviously, and it's a loss in the end, no matter how you look at it. But this is a team that feels like they have what it takes to be able to get there. The real question now, this comes down to, how do they face adversity? Is this a team that's actually going to fight back from that? Is this a team that's going to wilt under pressure? I just saw a tweet that said BYU, and somehow that came in there. Does the Texas Tech loss, lead to a second loss? And we've seen this from time to time where those losses compound on each other and they move forward, and you kind of start spiraling. To me, this would be the biggest, or the worst time to have that spiral, especially because you're going into a bye week and you let that simmer. And to have a loss simmer for 3 straight weeks is not, that does not bode well for a team. That doesn't help team camaraderie. It doesn't help kind of the mission and plan that the team has for itself. And so more important than any game on this season, I would say, is this week. And, you don't have to look pretty, and obviously you want to look better than what you have to kind of prove some doubters wrong. But at the same time, you've got to get in there and you've just simply got to win. And if you can get away with a win, that's all that matters. Like I said, this is the point in the season where it's a real true inflection point on where this team can go. And do they bounce back from the adversity? Do they handle it and manage it the right way, or do they wilt under pressure and lose another game? And you can point to injuries, you can point to all kinds of different things, but at the end of the day, the players that are on the field have got to get it done. And so we'll see what happens, and I think that'll be a good test for this team. And we'll get into the numbers here in a minute to kind of break this down. I also have a special guest from West Virginia to kind of talk about these things and kind of go over it a little bit more, get their perspective of it. But before I get into kind of the West Virginia preview a little bit, On Tuesday, officially, Kyle Whittingham ruled Hunter Andrews out for the season. We'd kind of known a little bit about that over the weekend, but didn't get an official word from him until Tuesday. And so that's another loss for Utah, season-ending injury. That's 3 at least of starting caliber players that have been lost for the season. 2 of those guys, obviously Rabbit Evans and Dadrian Zipperer, haven't really played for the Utes, so it's a big loss in terms of what they were projected to be, but Utah still has been playing without them. And so, that's not the end of the world. You obviously have to have guys step up and do what they need to. But this is the first player that really kind of takes a hit to Utah's offense. With that said, his production still hasn't been a ton. It's not like he's been the top guy for Utah and suddenly they're out that guy. But he's still a guy that projected very well into this team. They wanted to do a lot with him. Obviously was the gadget guy that has a ton of speed. He's a physical guy. Just an asset on the field, and no matter what situation they were in. And unfortunately, you lose him. It's a tough situation. Utah's not alone in these injuries, right? I see a lot from Utah fans that they've been hurt from the last 2 years and think that suddenly Utah's the only team that ever gets hurt. And I get that, right? The last 2 years have taken a mental toll on a lot of people, right? And it's tough to bounce back from that and hear an injury. The reality is these things happen every single year. Is it something that Utah's doing? I don't think so. With that same point, I know a lot of people aren't a fan of Under Armour, and they say that the cleats are causing problems. To my knowledge, there hasn't been any scientific study that says that there's truth to that. I do know that there's, I've heard from a lot of different people that say why the players hate them or why they cause problems. The reality is this is a tough sport. It's physical in nature. There's a lot of different things that happen. And, I don't know that the cleat is entirely to blame for certain things. Guys in the NFL are still having problems with it. Guys that are, at other Under Armour schools are still able to play. It happens, right? And I think it's really easy to pinpoint certain things, and you may be right, you may be wrong, but I think it's tough either way, right? And the reality is it's a sport that you lose guys every single year. So we'll see how Utah bounces back with that. They've got a lot to prove this week coming into this West Virginia game. You've got to be able to showcase your talent. You get another opportunity to do that on Fox. You get the prime viewing window again, where you get a chance to kind of show that it was potentially, not what Utah is used to, or it's another chance for people to look at it and say, no, we know exactly what Utah is, right? And I think Utah would obviously not like the latter. They would like to prove that they're something different, that they have something better to do. This West Virginia team does have a good defense. It's not quite the same as Texas Tech's, but there's still a chance. And Utah can't go into this game expecting to just roll into Morgantown and get a win. Obviously this whole week has had some drama with the Devin Dampier stuff. I'm not going to get into that, right? You can say that Utah played some gamesmanship. Kyle played some gamesmanship. In the end, Devin Dampier was always going to be available. He was always going to play. Utah felt the need to say that he, wasn't probable because there was no probability to it. He was going to play. And based on the league rules, it essentially is about the game. It's not about the practice week. So Utah feels that, they've done everything right. The league hasn't said otherwise, that they've had some problems. And so this is the way that Kyle Whittingham's going to do it. And other teams are more than welcome to do it. And I think, it's a situation where putting him on the injury report could have actually changed the metrics for him and given some people some doubt that he could play. And then Texas Tech has to scheme maybe differently. Who knows? Doubtful, quite honestly. But at the same time, there's no advantage to necessarily say he's not injured, because at the same time, he's always been available and he was always going to play. So, I'm sure we're going to continue to hear more from that. It's other fan bases, quite honestly, that have had more problems with this, and I get it. It's looking at it and thinking that Kyle Whittingham's playing some game. He's going to be within the rules, and that he's going to take whatever advantage that he can get. And if the league says it's all about the game, they're going to focus on the game. They're not going to focus on practices. So that's what it is. We're going to leave it at that. Let's jump into this West Virginia stuff. And, I'm going to get into these numbers here shortly, but the biggest storyline coming out of West Virginia is essentially an injury report that very similarly looks like a Utah team the last 2 years, right? There's been so many injured players, and the more that I look at this team and talking to individuals, this West Virginia team, in different veins, but it is very similar to Utah last year. They're an offense that couldn't move the ball, and they couldn't score. They had a ton of injuries, and they had to balance all of that. So Utah is essentially facing itself in the mirror in a lot of respects. This West Virginia team has a better defense right now. Still not to the levels that Utah's defense was last year, but still kind of a similar situation to last year in how this team operates. So really fascinated to kind of see how this goes because Utah has experienced this. They understand it. As Kyle would say, nobody has sympathy for you. That's the nature of the game. So here's kind of where West Virginia is at. And in my interview with our special guest, he documents a lot of these a lot more and goes over that. We'll have that at the end of the episode. But just kind of a high-level point here. West Virginia most likely will be without its starting quarterback in Nico Marchio. He was in Colorado this week seeing a foot specialist to kind of see where he's at. He still hasn't made it back to Morgantown, and so the chances of him even being ready or game ready is not likely. And so we'll see what happens. Rich Rodriguez, who is the head coach there now, who Utah fans should be pretty familiar with his time in Arizona. He's utilized a lot of different QBs, and so it'll be interesting to see kind of how this goes. But it's not a great situation for them to have your starting quarterback already out and not really have a lot of consistency there. And it would be fine in some respects if it was just that. We obviously saw Utah having a quarterback injury derails a ton of it, but they're losing a lot more than that. And so, for a team that loves to run the ball, and West Virginia rushes about for 200 yards every single game, at least that's the average for the season. That'll come down just simply based on some of the games that they've had this year. They've lost to Ohio and Kansas. That Ohio loss was pretty brutal. Nobody really saw that one coming, but then have wins over Robert Morris and Pitt. So you get the backyard brawl win, obviously a big win for that program, but it's just been an inconsistent game for this team. You never really know what to expect, and the offense hasn't really moved the ball. So the main focus here with the Rich Rod team is he loves to have up-tempo, and he's going to continue to have up-tempo. He's going to push it. He recognizes that he's most likely going to beat in a lot of areas on the field just with kind of where he's at in his progression there with the team. But that doesn't mean that this team isn't going to fight for him. He's still going to have guys that are going to continue to work hard and try to move the ball. So what happened here at running back, though, is your leading or your starting running back, I should say, is Jaheim White. He's a returner, was about the only returner on a roster that featured something like 80 transfers. He suffered a season-ending injury, and so they're out him. He was their second leading rusher in terms of production. He was their starter, but he's out. And then recently, Ty Edwards, who kind of took the reins there and became the leading rusher, he is also questionable this week. It's probably not likely that he plays, but we're going to get injury reports starting tonight at 8 p.m., and we'll kind of see where they're leaning that way, but it's not trending well there. And then Sincere Bowers is also questionable with a concussion. He's, that's TBD, and, he may play, but he hasn't had a ton of production. So there's just a lot of backups or guys that have been thrown in there but just haven't really done a ton. I know they've really kind of turned to this kid, Clay Ash, but he's not your typical running back in terms of, downhill runner or a guy that's going to hit the holes hard and be physical. It's just a different style of run game, and so it'll be different for this team. They're also losing two of their top four wide receivers, one to a season-ending injury, and Jaden Bray. It's just a tough situation there for them. They're similar to Utah this year in the sense that they haven't been able to effectively find a passing game. And so the fact that you lose two of those guys doesn't help that situation anymore. And then the biggest blow, in my opinion, is outside of quarterback, obviously. The biggest blow is on the offensive line. You're losing essentially the whole right side. Excuse me. And their center's out, their right guard's out, right tackle's out. At least they're all questionable. There's no official ruling on them being out yet. But this is an offensive line that it's already coming together from the transfer portal, trying to piece these things together. And, they've had some consistency with these guys and done decently well. But now if you're essentially, losing your entire right side of the line, you're losing your center who's the heartbeat of that line in terms of being able to, call out plays and kind of see what the defense is doing, you're in a world of hurt. And there's guys that can step in, guys that have some veteran experience that can get in there, but it's clearly, there's a clear reason why they're not the starters, right? And so this is a team that's going to suffer a ton there. Some of these guys may play, as I said, they're still questionable, and we'll find out more. But this is an offensive line that's going to be in a world of hurt. And going against a Utah defensive line that, features the leading sacker in the country, it's going to be a tough situation. And so you're going to have to imagine that Utah dials up a ton of pressure, especially on that right side of the offensive line, and really tries to make them pay. The thing there is if they start a backup, most likely it's going to be a mobile quarterback. He's not a great passer, and so they're going to rely on his run game a ton in Jaden Henderson. But, it's not going to be a great situation. And if Utah can really establish itself in the trenches, and I'll say it on both sides, but I think especially on this defensive side, if they can establish some pressure and really make this offense not run, be effective, Utah's going to be okay. I say that knowing that Utah's offense still has to produce as well, but I think Utah's defense is going to be in a better situation going up against this offense than anything else, simply because of the injuries, beyond all of that. So there's still risk in the sense that as they look to establish the run, there's going to be some different looks. They're going to be essentially going up against themselves and kind of how they play with Devin Dampier. That'll benefit them based on what they were able to see in fall camp and in spring and different things that way. But if Utah continues to have their problems in tackling and they can't wrap up and they can't, contain, this could be a long day for Utah. You can have this great defense that does well and can put pressure and you can attack that right side. But if the quarterback gets out of the pocket and is able to make, some positive gains with his legs, or he's able to do different things to establish the run, this Utah team could be, in a world of hurt quickly. I think Utah will be okay, but it's easy to say right now knowing, where things have been. And so really curious to see how this goes. You go into this game, you have to imagine that Utah feels pretty positive about what they're doing, but you can see where things can spiral. So that's the injury report. We're going to know more, in the coming days as they flip these things. But it's not looking good for West Virginia, and they're going to have to try to piecemeal things together against a Utah team that should being the key word, be hungry to get a win, should be looking to bounce back from that Texas Tech loss, should be looking to reclaim kind of some supremacy in the Big 12 title chances, that kind of stuff. So, if this is a Utah team that kind of plays around with its food, so to speak, and messes around and kind of walks through this game, it's not going to go well. And so it's definitely going to have to be a thing where Utah's on its game. They're playing the way that they need to. Don't look over your shoulder trying to do something different. You've got to focus on this. So that's that. Looking at some stats, I said last week that, maybe some of you don't love the advanced stats. Maybe you do. And I heard from quite a few of you saying you love it. So I'm going to keep them in there. RIP to the guys out there or women that are listening to this podcast and don't love advanced stats. That's your loss. But we're gonna continue to move forward. I'm in the process of actually making weekly graphics that I'm hoping to put out there that have a lot of this stuff. I think it'll be pretty interesting to kind of show. I mean, there's people out there that do this stuff, so it's not like I'm breaking new ground here. But I've learned to code a little bit over the off season, and I've been pulling in some API data to kind of create things for me that I can put out there for you guys. So hoping to get that out here shortly. I ran into a little bug that I was not too fond of recently, and so just trying to get that to work. So once I get that all settled, I will make sure that we get that out. At the very least, we're going to talk about these stats here. So looking at this from, some advanced stats, if you remember right, we talked about success rate, we talked about explosiveness, we talked about line yards, stuff rate, havoc plays, those types of things. So those are going to be common vernacular that I'm going to try to use in there, and I'll try to, remind you what some of these things are to try to help. But it's, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. So looking at this team, let's start with Utah's offense against West Virginia's defense. So Utah's offense has been pretty solid in terms of their success rate. Success rate, once again, being where you have to convert 50% of your needed yards on first down, 70% of your yards on second down, and 100% of your yards on third or fourth down. So looking at it from that way, did you do it? Did you not? That kind of stuff. It's pretty simple. Utah's converting on 52.7% of its plays. And so it's pretty solid. They rank 16th in the country there. They're doing well, right? Even with that Texas Tech loss, this team is still operating at a high level and doing well. Conversely, this West Virginia defense is only allowing teams 35.4%, which is 26th in the country. So they're a good defense. They've been able to stop teams in kind of what they're able to do. This will be an interesting matchup to kind of see how Utah's able to be effective there and kind of manage. The real problem here, and anybody that's watched this game understands this, is in this stat called explosiveness. Now, explosiveness is essentially kind of the average number of points added on a successful play. So you can look at it this way, where wherever you're at lined up on a field, there's an assigned point value for it. So, for example, if you're lined up at the 5-yard line, the expected point value is pretty low because you're not expected to score. Now, if you're on the 5-yard line on the opposite end, on the opponent's side, that expected point is supposed to be high because you're expected to score. So you can kind of see, you don't have to go through all of the points there, but did you add points to your system, essentially, is what you're saying. Are you collecting points? How effective are you at doing that? And it's just kind of an average of looking at that. So looking at this, the explosiveness for Utah is not great. They actually ranked 136th in the country. There are 136 teams in FBS, and so not a great situation. They're getting it done, but they're not necessarily adding a ton of value on every single play in average, right? And so this is a team that they're not getting a ton of chunk yards. That's essentially what it's saying. You're not getting a ton of chunk yardage. You're just kind of dink and dunking your way down the field and having success. And if you've watched this Utah team, that's pretty much what it is. They're going a few yards here and there. They're running the ball effectively and having a high success rate, but they're not necessarily, they're not pushing the ball downfield on big chunk yard plays or big plays that Kyle Whittingham has talked about wanting to have. And so, that's the biggest area of concern is if a team takes that away, similarly to what Texas Tech did last week, Utah can't move the ball, or at least they haven't moved the ball this year. And so that explosiveness number needs to go up. You've got to be able to have that. You can still be 136th and have an effective team, but you've got to find ways to be able to kind of get a little bit more there, right? Like you've got to be able to hone in on what you can do, find ways to scheme it in a way where you just say, look, we're going to do it, and that's the way it's going to be. There's a reason why some of these academy schools are effective in running the ball and the triple option, that kind of stuff, is they know what they're doing, they're all in on it, and they're successful at it. Does it always work? No. But if you know what you're doing and you're gaming to it, it can be successful. So explosiveness doesn't necessarily have to be that big of a thing, but it kind of shows the story of where they're at. Conversely, West Virginia's defense, they rank 49th here. So they're doing a really good job of limiting teams there. And so it's really gonna come down to how does Utah manage that? Can they get explosive plays? Can they get what they need to? Or is this another day where Utah's stuffed? Looking at this from the line yards, you may remember the line yards is a simple stat that looks at the offensive line, essentially saying, how well did the offensive line do at creating plays for the team. Where this goes essentially is the line yards for Utah, they're averaging 3.75 yards. That's a ton. That's essentially saying the offensive line is giving Utah on their own about 4 yards every single play. That's pretty solid, right? Like, you need that. That ranks 8th in the country, so it clearly shows that this offensive line is getting the push that they need, and they're doing well. Conversely, West Virginia is only allowing teams 2.68 yards. So still kind of in that range. They rank 53rd there. Utah is in that vein where if you can get in that, you're going to be fine. Looking at stuff rate. So this is how often do you get stuffed. Utah's offense actually doesn't get stuffed all that much. They're at 9.2% of the time. That's 5th in the country. And West Virginia's defense hasn't done a great job of necessarily limiting that. They allow 15.9%. So you've got an offensive line that is doing well. They're not allowing a lot of stuffs. So stuffs meaning like stopped at the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss, that kind of stuff. They're not doing as well. And so Utah, there's potential there, right? You can see kind of looking at the numbers without even looking at the game. You can pair that, with what you've seen on the field, and you can kind of see that. If Utah can establish what they need to do on the offensive side of the ball in the trenches, they're going to be okay. Lastly, havoc plays, they've only allowed 9%. Those are, tackles for loss, fumbles. These are, different things that are turnovers, that kind of stuff. They rank 6th in the country. Utah's done well as an offense. Conversely, West Virginia is only putting up 17% havoc plays. It's about average, a little above average for the country. So there's that. Let's switch over quickly to the West Virginia offense versus Utah defense. So going through this real quick, their success rate is only 39%, so 107th in the country. They're not moving the ball very well. They're not getting what they need to, and it's resulting in a world of hurt. Conversely, I keep saying that. Sorry, for Utah, that's the best word for it. But for Utah, they're allowing only 33%, ranked 16th in the country. So you've got a defensive line that is already going up against an offensive line that isn't getting a lot of push. You add to that the injuries, there's real potential here where Utah can kind of frustrate things. With that said, you've got, a quarterback that's a little bit more mobile. Does that change things? Maybe. Explosiveness, both of these teams are not great on both sides of the ball in offense and defense in allowing or having that. And so it's not a great situation there. West Virginia ranks 112th, so just a little above Utah, but not much. And then Utah's defense has allowed a little bit too much. They rank 101. So you still need to get a little bit more push. You've kind of seen that. Some of that comes with these missed tackles. You've got to be able to limit things a little bit more. On this, with the line yards, West Virginia's offense only averages 2.73, which ranks 102nd in the country. Utah, conversely, is at 2.25, which ranks 17th as a defense. So they're limiting a ton. This West Virginia offense doesn't get a ton, and now you're kind of meeting heads. That becomes a real concern for West Virginia if things go well for Utah, where you get stopped at the line of scrimmage a ton, right? And so it's tough. It's tough. Stuff rate, West Virginia has been stuffed 22.9% of the times. That's 114th in the country, not great. Utah, on the defensive side, is stuffing teams 28.3% of the time, which is 13th in country. They're getting that pressure. They're getting in there. They're doing what they need to get guys tackled behind the line of scrimmage or sacked or whatever that may be. They're getting what they need to. Lastly, you've got West Virginia that's allowing 16% of their plays to be havoc plays. That's not a great look. It's you can't have that. You can't have what that a team essentially to do that. That's ranked 85th in the country. Utah on the other side, they go out there and make 17.5% of havoc plays. And so you're once again paired up with that. That's still only about average with not average. It's 52, but a team that is doing really well. So I hope that kind of gives you a clear picture of what that is. I go through that a little fast because I don't want to completely bore you, but it's kind of fascinating, and I hope that when I can show this graphic to you, you can see it a little bit better, because I think me completely talking about it forever isn't going to be the best, but at least you can see it. I do want to point out a few things, just going a little deeper on Utah's offense and kind of how it goes. I was surprised at how often Utah runs the ball versus passing the ball. Kyle's always talked about wanting to have, pretty equal, 50-50 type system. I think many think that it's all run heavy, and that's all it's been. Well, Utah this year so far is 50.4% run and 49.6% pass. So they've been pretty equal. I know it doesn't feel that way at times. Obviously, the run game has been much more productive for Utah, but they're doing well. With that, yeah. And then in terms of success rate, Utah's having a far better situation on offense and running. They rank 5th in the country at 58% of run plays being a success versus 47.3% of passing plays being a success. That ranks 44th in the country. So despite, their struggles and having the fact that they can be successful in their passing has been okay. They're doing okay. I think what we see on the field looks far different than what the stats are telling us at times. And I think they're getting it done outside of the Texas Tech game, but you've got to see more, right? You've got to be able to have the ball move down the field and not just have all these screen plays that get blown up or yards or passes that go for like 3, 4, 5 yards, behind the sticks. You've got to get something there. So, that's kind of where it is. And, really fascinating to kind of see how that goes. So was really interested in that. Like I said, I hope to get this out here soon so that you can see these things. But just kind of a fun little look at the stats. Looking at this game, I mean, everything is kind of lending itself to believe that Utah should go in there and win, right? You're 12.5 point favorites. You're coming in there against an injury-laden team. Yes, you're going cross-country, but if Utah can establish itself, especially in the trenches, things should be pretty solid. So you have to like Utah's chances. Is it going to be perfect? Is it going to be exactly what you need? No. But, based on the stats, based on the injury report, based on what this team can do on paper, this should be a potential for a win for Utah. So that's kind of where I'm going to stop. Before I tell you about our move on to our special guests, let me tell you about our partners at Canyon View Credit Union. At Canyon View Credit Union, it's on the house. Close a mortgage and get a free appraisal up to $600. To learn more details or apply, visit canyonviewcu.com. All right, joining me today is special guest Spencer Ripchik from the Dominion Post in West Virginia. He's the beat writer who covers the Mountaineers. He's new to the beat, if I'm not mistaken, but has an opportunity to cover a new squad that is in there. Spencer, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I agree. I'm new, but so is like the entire West Virginia team and staff, so it's kind of a good time to get into the team.
Let's start there, because obviously they make a change. Rich Rod comes back to West Virginia. There's, I don't think they were the highest amount of people in the turnover, but it was near the top. What's just kind of the general vibe of kind of how this team was put together? Are they hitting? Are they connected? Kind of where are they at right now? About 4 or 5 weeks into the season.
Yeah, well, this was, like you said, is the most transfers. I think one of the most transfers. They had 80+ new guys on the roster, which is pretty insane. I mean, you're going to get that when you have a new coach, but in this era, Rich wanted to get his guys in, and I think he's found some of his guys, and some of his guys on the roster are still there as well, and he's used some of them, like Nico Marchiel, returning quarterback. But I think in this first year, as you can see by the record, 2-2, they lost to Ohio, and they got blown out by Kansas. Rich really wanted to establish the culture this year, establish that hard edge. That's what his goal was for the season. I don't really think he cared about the outcome realistically. The athletic director didn't really care the outcome for the first year. He just wanted to see some progression and maybe some momentum into the next year. I mean, they already beat Pitt, so in everyone's eyes, that's already a win for the season, so they could finish 2-10 if they had to. But I think right now, they're establishing the culture. I think the only problem right now is the offense doesn't look up to the standards of a Rich Rodriguez offense. He's known for his offense, and the offense just doesn't look good right now. I mean, they scored 10 points last week. They're lucky they scored 10 points. They look bad against Ohio at times. They look really bad against Pitt too, and they just managed to squeak out that win. So, but right now, Rich is just trying to establish that culture and create a long-term plan for the program.
You touched on Rich Rod really trying to kind of be the up-tempo offense, right? Utah fans, or Utah in general, is pretty familiar with him and his time with Arizona. They had a lot of times where they competed against them. Rich Rod came in there at times and absolutely smoked Utah. I mean, when his offense is churning, it's tough to beat because of that up-tempo situation. For this West Virginia team, and we'll get into injuries in a second, that's obviously going to be a big storyline going into this game. But for this offense and where he wants to go, kind of what is he doing to kind of patch that? What is this offense right now?
So the offense is definitely tempo offense. It's going to be fast. I think he's definitely tried to get it as fast as you can, and they're going to focus heavily on the quarterback run, even though sometimes their quarterback doesn't look like he can run that well. Like Nico hasn't looked as good of a runner, but he has a bunch of lefty quarterbacks on the team, which is kind of unique. Jalen Henderson, the Texas A&M transfer, who will probably go this weekend. He's a lefty quarterback. Nico's a lefty quarterback, so that'll be something. But yeah, the quarterback run's going to be big. The tempo is going to be fast. It's kind of coming back to bite them a little bit because I think the tempo has actually created a lot of the injuries that have been happening. But the tempo has worked so far, or at least in the wins, it's worked. Against Pitt, I mean, the tempo kind of gassed Pitt out, and they had injuries every snap, it kind of felt like. So, yeah, the tempo is definitely going to be fast. The quarterback's going to be ran a lot. They're going to try to get the ground game going. I don't know how well they're going to be able to do that with the running back injuries, but that'll be the focal point for this offense.
This team is 2-2 on the season. Like you said, they have already got that Pitt win, which, backyard brawl is obviously one of the biggest games on the schedule for that team. But you had a week prior where you lose to Ohio, right? And then you lose again the next week to Kansas. And Kansas is a solid team, so I'm not going to pin anything on that. But what has kind of been the key for this team in the wins and losses? Like where do things go wrong when they lose, and what goes right when they win?
Well, when it goes right is the defense is probably one of the better defenses that I've seen in the Big 12. They have a really young defensive coordinator, Zach Alley, came over from the Brent Venables staff in Oklahoma last year. He was the assistant defensive or co-defensive coordinator. He's really smart. He's creative. He blitzes everybody. He blitzes the safety sometimes, catches people off guard, makes them uncomfortable. But just the reason that they've lost is just they can't score points. I mean, the Ohio game, they had multiple opportunities to score. Sometimes the drives will look insane. Like everything will be clicking. Rich will march right down the field in like 3 minutes to go like 80 yards, and everything will be bang, bang, bang. But then for the next 5 drives, they'll go 3 and out every single drive. So their offense is very inconsistent, very streaky, which is why they pretty much have lost those 2 games, and they almost lost the Pitt game because the offense couldn't get anything going. And they also just haven't figured out the quarterback situation. I mean, Nico Marchiello has started all 4 games, but then he's also been subbed out. He hasn't finished a single – or I guess he did finish the Pitt game, but he got benched during the Pitt game. He got Robert Morris game. He got subbed out. Obviously, they were winning at that point, but they got subbed out in the Pitt game. He got subbed out in the Ohio game, and he got subbed out in the Kansas game. So he's been benched, and Rich has no idea who he's playing at quarterback right now. And now that Nico has a foot injury, he probably won't start this weekend. So now they're going to go to a backup quarterback, and then – again, they don't know if he's going to be good, so they'll put another quarterback in. But their offense is just very inconsistent right now.
Let's kind of stick with those injuries right now, and there's a ton, so I don't think we need to just do this mass conversation. Let's kind of break it up a little bit, but kind of sticking with the quarterback. Where obviously Nico is he was in Colorado this week, if I'm not mistaken, going to a specialist. What does this do for this team when you don't have a quarterback? I mean, Utah knows this very well, having not really had a quarterback last year, but where is this team in terms of kind of its consistency with this quarterback situation going on right now?
Well, luckily for Rich Rodriguez, he's kind of, I mean, he didn't mean to plan for this, but he kind of planned for this. He's been repping 5 quarterbacks at practice consistently, and all through the summer, he didn't name a starter to make sure, A, nobody transferred, and B, he has enough guys to go for this weekend or for the season if something happened like this. So luckily he's been repping 5 quarterbacks. I mean, some of them are obviously are definitely lower on the depth chart, even though he hasn't had a depth chart. His depth charts, all his quarterbacks say is a starter, or not the starter, but just the top quarterback, and then or, sure, other options. So luckily he's repped a bunch of quarterbacks. all the other players, I mean, they're gonna have player speak where they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, this I like playing with this guy. He's been ready to go. I'm not worried about it at all." So I think, but it's really hard when you don't really have that guy to rally around. And Rich even said like he'd love to have that guy, but he's also not opposed to having 5 guys that are ready to go. So I think, and like you said, Nico's in Colorado. He was there yesterday, Tuesday. I mean, if you put him back, flying back Wednesday, West Virginia practices hard Tuesday, Wednesday, and a little bit on Thursday. So, I mean, if he gets back, I was looking at flights trying to see when he was coming in, and it didn't look like he was going to make it for practice in the afternoon today. So he's going to miss 2 physical practices. So that means you only have Thursday and then the walkthrough on Friday or the day off on Friday, and then Saturday's the game. So it just doesn't look like he's going to play this weekend.
Assuming that he's out, you said that Jaden Henderson is likely the starter. What kind of attributes does he have that Utah fans should know about? Is he mobile quarterback? Is he a pocket passer? What is kind of his skill set?
Oh, he's definitely not a pocket passer. He is a mobile quarterback. He looked good last week against Kansas. Again, it was late in the game, but he drove West Virginia all the way down the field, and he's definitely a mobile quarterback. He ran for 77 of the 95-yard drive that they had all the way down the field. So he's definitely a mobile quarterback. We haven't seen much from him throwing other than a couple of drives pretty much, and he hasn't looked the best throwing. What everyone really has been saying is that they need to take Nico and Jalen Henderson and fuse them together to make the West Virginia starting quarterback, because Nico is the thrower but just can't run, and Jalen's the runner and can't throw. So if he's definitely a runner, so Utah have to be keen on him taking off and design quarterback runs, and he's got a lot more speed than Nico does. So that'll be something they'll have to look out for.
This West Virginia team has been pretty effective in running the ball in totality, right? I think they average about 200 yards per game. But with that said, you now have 3 guys that are injured, 3 of the top guys. One of them, if I'm not mistaken, has a season-ending injury. Where do they stand right now? Where do these guys, who's set to come back, and can they establish the run this Saturday?
Yeah, so Jaheim White, their starting running back for the season, number 1. He is out for the season-ending injury. He had a brutal he got fouled, 2 personal fouls on him on 1 tackle. I think it was a hip drop tackle and a face mask tackle, or maybe it was a horse collar and face mask, but it was a really bad tackle, and he's out for the season, which is really bad because he was their leading rusher last year, and Rich Rod really wanted to use him, and Jaheim was really excited because Rich runs the ball so much. But then they went to Clay Ash after that. Jaheim got hurt in the Ohio game, so they went to Clay Ash after that. He's a walk-on guy. He's more of a pass-catching back, and he's definitely not your downhill running back. He's a lot smaller, doesn't really have that much speed. So Rich realized that in the Pitt game when Ty Edwards started cooking, and he rushed for over 100 yards and had 3 touchdowns. He's this big 6'2", 225 pounds running back. He's what Rich has been looking for pretty much ever since Jaheim White went down. And then all of a sudden, last week before Kansas, he popped up on the injury report as probable to play. So then people didn't think too much about it. And then before the game, he became a game-time decision, and then ultimately didn't play the entire Kansas game. And the running game looked really lost. So it went to Clay Ash, who, again, was not really a first or second down back. He's more of a third down pass-catching back. And then Sincere Bowers they went to, who's a younger guy and a more of a running back kind of guy. He's got a little bit of speed, but now he's questionable this week. So they have a Tyler Jacklish, who Rich says they got off the waiver wire. They literally added him 2 or 3 weeks ago, just before the season started. He's a bigger running back as well, but he hasn't shown much so far. And then Diori Hubbard is another young guy. I think he's a sophomore. He was a returner. So it'll probably be a mixture of Clay Ash, Diori Hubbard, and Tyler Jacklish probably going for West Virginia. And Rich also isn't opposed to mixing in some slot receivers at running back. I know they last week with the injuries they had Oren Singleton. He's a slot receiver. He rushed for a couple yards, and they ran jet sweeps with him. So maybe they'll put him in the backfield. Rodney Gallagher also is a very versatile slot receiver that they can use as well.
There's obviously other injuries, and I don't want to get into all of them because, we don't need to document everything. But I would say one of the more impactful is probably this offensive line. They're going to be going up against a Utah defense that features John Henry Daly, who is the leading sack player in the country. This offensive line has, questionable status for its center, its right tackle, and right guard. Where are they at with that? Are they going to remain questionable? What does this offensive look like going into this game?
Yeah, it's weird because we landed Livingston, the center for West Virginia. He was clearly injured against Kansas. You could see he struggled to walk off the field. He's still questionable. And Carson Lee came in. He's a power forward transfer. He came in, play center. Rich just got a couple of centers he's been working throughout the season. A lot of the guys, because it's a whole new roster with 80 new players. And most of the offensive line is reconstructed. So they've been trying guys at every position and seeing what sticks. So the center, they have pretty deep at center, but right guard and right tackle, both of those guys, and they have pretty long names. So I'm not going to try to pronounce them or I'm going to butcher them, but they didn't look like they were injured in the Kansas game. So it was more of an injury during the week, I guess, or I guess it was just after the Saturday game, because Rich told us on Tuesday that they were both questionable. So that means they hadn't practiced yet. Because Sunday they do a walkthrough and we go over the game on Saturday, and then Monday they have off. So Tuesday they had a physical practice. So it wasn't during practice. So they must have been injured during the Kansas game. But yeah, if I was Utah, I'd attack that right side of the line the entire time. There's going to be some young guys in there. There is some veterans in the depth that they have. They added a bunch of transfers, but I think it'll be a bunch of new guys who haven't seen a lot of snaps at all this season.
Well, in your opinion, what would be the strength of this team right now?
I think it's I'm going to say the defense, but then you're going to be like, oh, but they let up 40 points last week. But it's definitely the defense. If it weren't for 4 plays, West Virginia's defense would have played really well, and it would have been a lot closer game. And then the only problem with the defense is the offense is on the field for so little, so they don't have a lot of rest. So that's why the defense kind of gets torched every once in a while. But the defensive line is really good. They got Jamori Robinson back for his second week. His snap level, he was on a snap count last week since he was just brand new to the team last week, since he was dealing with NCAA issues, and he had 10.5 sacks last year. So he's a big-time transfer from UTSA. So their defensive line is definitely probably their strength. Their secondary is okay at times. They have Michael Coach Jr., who is really good. He's one of the better corners in the Big 12. I think he's been – people don't even throw to him. He's been that dominant. But then their second safeties have some issues giving up big plays. But I would say their defense is probably more of their strength. And when they can run the ball, they run the ball really well. But with all the injuries on running back and now offensive line, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to run the ball.
The backyard brawl is obviously going to be the highlight of this schedule for this team. But what are fans? What is kind of the vibe going into this game for fans? Do you expect there to be a lot of people there? Is it going to be rowdy? What's kind of the environment going into this game?
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of people at the game. It's a Hall of Fame induction. Pat McAfee might be in the house because he's getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. I don't know with his restrictions about College Game Day, but College Game Day is at Penn State, which is only a 2-hour drive and probably a 20-minute helicopter ride if they wanted to get him in there. So he might be there. It's going to be powder blue all over the stadium. And West Virginia people show out for their games, no matter who they play. Even the Robert Morris had a pretty good crowd, and now the Big 12 should have bigger crowds. This is their first Big 12 game at home, so it should be interesting. And they're wearing their throwback uniforms too, so a lot of people love looking at those, the 1965 ones. So it's gonna be a rowdy crowd. But yeah, the outcome of the season, I still think I think they should shoot for 500. I think that's the goal. And right now they're 2-2. And I predicted the season before the season started for them to be 3-3 by the time they get to the bye after BYU next week, after the first 6 games. And I'm pretty much on the nose with that, except for the Ohio game, which that was kind of a crazy loss since it was a group of 6 school. But yeah, I think if they trying to get to 500 or close to 500 is a goal. But obviously it's going to be an uphill battle. They play Texas Tech, they play Arizona State, they play BYU. They play a lot of good schools still, so it's but like I said, they won the Pitt game, so that's all that people care about right now, and then just building momentum towards the end to next year.
We've talked a lot about, a lot of the things going against West Virginia in this game. They're a 12-point underdog at home. Whether that means anything or not remains to be seen. But in your view, how does West Virginia lose this game on Saturday?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, their offense doesn't go and they can't score points. They're going to lose this game. I don't care if Utah's offense didn't look that well last week. It doesn't matter. I mean, West Virginia's offense looked way worse. Even they can't score. I mean, they go 3 and out. They can't get offense. They can't get the offense going at all. They get immediately behind the sticks. They run a quarterback draw, and the quarterback gets like 1 or 2 yards, and then they try to run it with Clay Ash or one of the backup running backs, and they can't get anything. So I think it'll come down to if Ty Edwards, their running back, plays. He looked really good when he was in there against Pitt, but again, he's banged up, and now the right side of the offensive line is banged up. So we haven't seen the running game with that with them injured. So I think I just think that they lose the game if they don't score points. And the offense hasn't looked like they can score points so far, except for a couple of drives where they go down and march down the field and score a touchdown in the Pitt game and a couple in the Robert Morris game. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Last thing I've got for you, and then we'll get you out of here. I've heard from a lot of fans, well, not a lot, but a fair amount that are traveling to this game. They're coming out for West Virginia for the first time. Where are some places to go in Morgantown? Kind of what's the thing to do, and what should be the experience for these Utah fans?
Well, I think Utah fans are pretty safe to be wearing their Utah stuff. I mean, West Virginia fans so far are pretty rowdy. They'll heckle you, and they're not going to throw batteries or beer cans at you. That's just for Pitt. So they'll be fine in that department. And Utah's kind of still fairly new to the Big 12, so they're kind of a new opponent. So they shouldn't have too many issues with that. I'm also kind of new to West Virginia, but there's some good pizza places. There's an Italian place, Olivero is really good. That's a really good Italian place. Probably my favorite restaurant in town. There's Kegler's, where Rich has some of the best. People say it has the best chicken wings in town. It's a good sports bar, and then all downtown Morgantown has bars and stuff. And there's every single chain restaurant or anything you can think of in Morgantown as well. So that's pretty much that. And it'll be very active this weekend. I can tell you that.
Awesome, Spencer. Thank you so much. Let the people know where they can read your stuff if they want to find you.
So my Twitter or X is Ripchik Spencer, one word, or everything's gonna be one word, but just my name backwards because I didn't like the 2 R's together. And then you can read my stuff. DominionPost.com is where you can mainly find my stuff, but I'm also Ogden's main football writer, so most of the West Virginia papers and websites carry my content as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Spencer, and appreciate you coming on. We'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah, see you Saturday.
All right, thank you so much to Spencer for joining us today. It's a tough situation, right? Like, it's a tough situation for this West Virginia team. That's not to say that they can't go in and get a win. I'm really excited to see that environment, like you talked about, potentially having Pat McAfee there, who has been obviously the biggest proponent of West Virginia, not just as a player, but just kind of as a media member who is all the rage right now. That could be an electric environment, and if Utah's not careful, you could find yourself in a world of hurt. And so, this Utah team's going to have to be in the right mindset. They're going to have to be ready to go. But looking forward to it. Really, really, if you're traveling to West Virginia, have a safe travel. Enjoy the time out there. I mean, it should be pretty weather out there, and we should have some fun playing football. So, well, not me. Other people. We get to watch it. I get to write about it. Get to talk about it. Those things. All right. Well, we're going to close. We're going to get out of here. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day.